at stake in the world of politics this year, from control of Congress to the strength of the Biden presidency and even the future of abortion rights. A recent article in USA Today lays out 10 upcoming events that could be potential turning points for politics in the United States. David Jackson wrote that piece. He's a national political correspondent for USA Today, and he is with us more to talk about this. Really fascinating stuff. And I think it's sort of this, we're talking about this, of course, it's the beginning of the year, at perhaps the best time. Historically, a sitting president's party does not do well in the midterm elections. So explain how congressional redistricting plans could impact the tenuous hold Democrats have on the House and the Senate.
Well, because states have used the new census to redistrict and create new congressional districts. This will be the first election we've had since the 2020 census. So for every state has basically redrawn all of its congressional districts. And it just so happens that most of the states that picked up congressional seats are run by Republicans. So GOP-led legislators have created new congressional maps that favor their parties. So the estimates are that there are now 5 to 8 more congressional districts that are very Republican in nature and almost certain to be carried by that party. So that gives them a natural advantage going into this November.
So the State of the Union address, as you know, is typically held in late January or early February. Has the Biden administration set a date for this year's speech?
No, they haven't, and it's kind of surprising. I was kind of hoping they'd do that before the story ran, but they didn't. Basically, it's a negotiation between the White House and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi as to what would be the best date to deliver that speech. The working theory is that it'll either be the last Tuesday in January or the first Tuesday in February. They still haven't worked it out. We're hoping to hear sometime this week, but it'll probably be at the end of this month or early February.
Out of curiosity, do you know sort of what the negotiating points are? Is it just a matter of finding a space on the calendar, or is perhaps the Biden administration hoping for some significant wins between now and then, or maybe a week's difference will make all the difference for the administration?
I think it's more prosaic than that. I think it's the best television night is what they're looking for. I remember back during the George W. Bush years, they always wanted to do the State of the Union on a Thursday because they had must-see TV back then. And Thursday night was considered to be the biggest television night. In more recent times, Tuesday nights have been the preferred one. So I think it's just as simple as what would be best for frankly the television networks and members of Congress.
So let's talk about primary season. There are several big ones coming up in 2022, specifically in the closely watched state of Georgia. Explain what's at stake in those Senate and governor races.
Well, for whatever reason, Georgia has become the epicenter of national politics. You remember a year ago at this time, they had the 2 Senate runoffs, both won by Democrats, and that's what enabled the Democrats to take control of the U.S. Senate. This year, one of those senators is up for re-election already, and that will be a closely watched race because the Republicans feel like it's a good opportunity for them to pick up a Senate seat and take it back from one of those Democrats. There's also an interesting governor's race in Georgia that will dictate how much influence Donald Trump still has in the Republican Party. Republican Governor Brian Kemp was somewhat opposed to President Trump's efforts to basically take back the state from Joe Biden after the 2020 elections. He wasn't very cooperative with Trump's efforts to overturn the election back then. So Trump has sworn vengeance on him and is backing a former senator named David Perdue to take on Brian Kemp in that governor's race. So it's a situation where a Trumpite is challenging a non-Trump Republican in the governor's race. It's going to be a highly watched primary. Whoever survives that one will have to take on Stacey Abrams, who's a well-funded Democrat who's run for governor before and is highly thought of. So it's going to be a challenge for Republicans to hold on to the governorship in Georgia. So just about every tense current that's running through American politics is going to go through Georgia this year.
So speaking of the influence Donald Trump may or may not still have on the party, another race that people are going to be watching very closely is Representative Liz Cheney's race. Is that going to be kind of another, if you call it like a bellwether race, if you will?
Well, we think so because I think that's former President Trump's highest priority is to bump off Liz Cheney because she's been the most outspoken Republican who's been critical of it. She voted for impeachment over the January 6th incident a year ago, and he has been very public. She has continued to criticize President Trump, including during the January 6th committee investigation. Meanwhile, President Trump has been very vocal about his opposition to Liz Cheney. He picked a former Cheney aide, a Wyoming lawyer named Harry Hageman, to take her on in that Republican primary for that House seat in Wyoming. It's very rare for a House seat. There are 435 of them. It's very rare for one House election to garner so much attention, but that's what's going to happen in Wyoming in August. And it'll be interesting to see whether Cheney can hang on or not.
The Supreme Court is set to make some major rulings in 2022. Some are predicting the court will strike down the 1973 Roe versus Wade abortion rights ruling. If that happens, what do you foresee as the political impact for both Democrats and Republicans?
I think abortion will be the biggest social issue dictating the 2020 primary elections. I know it'll be the most financed one because we've got very large organizations on both sides of that issue. The pro-choice organizations and the anti-abortion groups are already raising billions of dollars to make that a major issue in the 2022 elections. It's interesting, those two sides don't agree on much, but both seem to think that the Supreme Court will indeed strike down Roe versus Wade. That'll basically grant state legislators the power to regulate or even ban abortion. So the feeling is that's going to be just a major issue because people will be electing lawmakers who have the power to ban abortion. That's going to be a big motivator for both sides of the issue, and we're going to hear a lot about it this fall.
All right, David Jackson, we'll look to have you back when some of these predictions play out in real time. David Jackson, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.